Do not blame, do not blame black people. Do not blame black people. You may have noticed a pattern amongst the recent wave of anti-Asian attacks, most of them in New York City. There were, and also quite a few in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, that area. And there was one interesting one in Houston. Um, but that and the pattern being that many of the assailants were African American, but you cannot blame black people for this. You can't blame them as a whole. You can't blame them as a group. You can't blame the majority of them. It's a tiny, 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 tiny minority of the total black population that has acted out physically. Now, um, this has been going on. There amongst this tiny tiny minority. This has been going on for a long time though, and who you do blame, I think, are some of the leaders in America who have refused to come out and speak directly to their people and say that Asians are not the problem. That's right. I am looking at Donald Trump. I am looking at some of the black leaders whom I will not name by name right now. Um, but of course, one of them rhymes with Harpton. Um, so, and I'm looking kind of at the NAACP because they put out a nice little statement. Now, the previous statement that they put out was really terrible. It had something to do with, yeah, now the violence has started to threat to the common well-being, the common safety of people, like as if the safety of Asians in and of themselves was not good enough. But their latest statement was pretty good. It definitely focused on trying to protect Asian women in particular, that Asian women were not deserving of this type of violence and certainly not murder. Um, but you can definitely look at some of the leaders. You can look at the leaders in the Asian community who have not reached out to their black counterparts to insist on a very, very visible, very high level, um, summit, getting together. Why in all these years of conflict between, um, violent conflict between African Americans and Asian Americans, why haven't we ever seen Jesse Jackson stand on the same stage as say a Judith Chu, with the hands raised, you know, declaring that enough is enough, you know, stop the violence, um, stop the violence both ways. I mean, we have the example of the Latasha Harlins murder. Of course, people don't know that what led up to that were murders of numerous Korean store owners in Los Angeles, and so that's part of the problem. You can't have you can't have a relationship in which one person is completely silent, in which one party doesn't know what's troubling the other party. And so Asian American leaders are to blame there. They are scared of standing up to their African American counterparts. Their African American counterparts have their own troubles to deal with. You know, Asian American leaders have to approach them and say, we want you to make this statement to quote unquote your people, because I say quote unquote because I don't fully buy in that race should be the all encompassing identification of individuals. So say this message to your quote unquote people that, Asians are not the problem. They are our brothers and sisters, you know, and, let's treat them as such. They have as much right to be here as we do. You don't blame them for all sorts of things. Don't resent them because you think that they have somehow been successful, more successful than black people, whether that is perception or reality. There's no need to resent that. There's no need to blame Asians as a whole. Um, yeah, don't think that they have some sort of wrongful privilege because they occupy a certain category in the affirmative action stratification classes. You know, that somehow because you know they are the last hired within affirmative action systems, that somehow they have some sort of great privilege in America, that somehow they have been born into great privilege in America. No, coming from someone who's been called a racial epithet hundreds of times in his life, meaning me, I can assure you that, whatever privilege we have is not great. So, Asian American leaders need to reach out. They need to stand up, but they're too chicken because they want to be politically correct. They still think that they're guests in this American House. Now, I will give a shout out to the 80/20 organization, an Asian American quote unquote civil rights group. They have raised a lot of money and donated to to create patrol groups and other organizations to try to directly prevent violence. This is a ridiculously inefficient way of utilizing our money, but it's still a good thing. Use that money, get some plane tickets, and go visit the various right-wing and left-wing leaders of America. They have both betrayed us. It takes two wings to create a vice that is squeezing us, meaning Asian America. We got the right, blaming us for the coronavirus. We got the left, basically saying that we should be resented and castigated for our seeming success. Our jobs and education opportunities should be taken away from us. And the worst part of the left is that they embraced the anti-Korean movement that started in the late 80s and has continued its long tale of existence into the current day, and that's part of why so many of the assailants in these anti-Asian acts of violence have been African Americans, because the African American leaders embraced the anti-Korean movement, which was characterized by hateful, violent songs like Black Korea by Ice Cube, rappers using words like chink and chinky to refer to Asians and Asian attributes. That was notorious. The Biggie Smalls there, he called us chinks and chingy. Talked about getting chinky-eyed, and you even had the Fugees with a racist skit on one of their big albums. You had all sorts of movies like the John Singleton hit Boys in the Hood, where they point at a sign, a billboard with Koreans on the billboard, and say basically that's the problem. Those people are taken over. So you have all this year after year, and you never had any leaders standing up against it. Black, Asian, white. The left basically fanned the flames. They called the LA riots, in which just so many Korean businesses were burned, so many Koreans and other Asians were terrorized by a multiracial group of rioters from Hispanic to Black to white and Asian, but it was definitely focused against Asians largely. The left called the LA riots the LA rebellion, meaning, when you're burning down those Korean stores, you're just participating in a righteous political rebellion. It's okay, go ahead and burn more stores down, and you saw that again this year with the burning down of looting of thousands of stores. Yeah, it was well good for a good cause, right? Black Lives Matter, but the message was still, you know, yeah, you can attack these Asian store owners, Asian business owners, like the Asian massage women. You know, you can attack Asian businesses if you have a righteous cause. Um, and that motherfucker uh, in Atlanta thought he had a righteous cause. And yeah, but it makes me want to embrace some of the people, the idea that some people are putting forward, that we got to start blasting back at motherfuckers, right? um, yeah, no, that's a bad idea. You're never gonna win in a shooting war in America. Nobody wins in that. But we need our Asian leaders to stand up, and our black leaders stand up. Say it. Stand up.